That's what optimization is for me. Optimization is never hitting that certain white room marker. It's having a character where every time I sit down and play, I have an amazing time and I feel like I was a strong contributor to the group and that everybody else felt good that I was there with them, you know?
All right, for my first action, I'd like to talk about World Anvil. World Anvil lets you go from massive binders of notes to a nice cohesive online platform where you can organize all your information into one simple, easy, manageable system. You can keep track of NPCs, where my fourth action went, player backstories, and so much more. For my second action, I'd like to use the showing off action, where I can tell you that you can upload custom NPC stat blocks directly to your campaign. And all it takes is just one search and you can find any NPC that you have curtailed to your world. Makes finding that tavern keeper a little faster. For my last action, I want to tell everyone that World Anvil is an amazing product for amazing GMs, so check it out. Hey GM, what does multiple attack penalty mean?
And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Deadly D8 interview. I am James. I use he, they pronouns. I'm very excited. I got two very great guests on with us today, so let's kick it right off with introducing everyone. Eli, you're up first. Welcome back to the channel.
Hey everyone, my name is Eli Hide. I am the editor of Deadly D8. I put together all of the videos that you guys see.
And I'm Michael Sayre, he, him. I'm a senior designer at Paizo, working on the Pathfinder RPG.
Now, we are coming with some very interesting video idea today that I think it really highlights the joy of playing Pathfinder, which is the character side of it all. We have each come up with a series of interesting characters and two very interesting characters, and I'm very, very excited to show them off. I believe Michael is going to kick us off with his first build, and we will go around the table essentially, chatting about what makes these characters so fun, unique, and all around awesome.
And stick around because Michael, I believe you included some spoilers in your build, some future upcoming content.
That is correct. Both of my builds use some equipment from our upcoming book, Treasure Vault.
Ooh.
So my first build, I've always been a big fan of comic books, and one of my favorite characters is Cable, who originally appeared, I want to say, in New Mutants. Someone is going to be like a lore hound and correct me that he was actually appeared as a young child in an earlier X-Men issue. But his original appearance is the fully fleshed time-traveling rebel from the future was in New Mutants. Cable has a cybernetic arm, telepathic and telekinetic powers, uses a really big gun, and is a humongous person. So I decided to make him as a human with the skilled heritage to represent the fact that he's from the future. He just has a lot of extra information and things at his fingertips. His background is insurgent because in the future he comes from the mutant apocalypse has already taken over the world. And his class is gunslinger with the way of the Vanguard because I wanted him to use big guns and throw people around. So the particular big gun that Cable is using in this build is the first Treasure Vault spoiler. It is the Barricade Buster. The Barricade Buster is an advanced two-handed firearm with the repeating kickback, orc, and volley 20 feet traits. It does 1d8 bludgeoning damage, and it has an 8-round magazine. So you can fire a lot of rounds off on this thing, but for a gunslinger especially, you're very short range, and about half of your range, you're taking a penalty. So the weapon is really intended to take out walls, siege weapons, shields, fixtures and stuff more than it's intended to be a really dynamic weapon, which I think works pretty well for Cable because, as I mentioned, we've also got some fun kind of magical capabilities there. To represent his mutant powers, I started with ancestry feats like the Arcane Tattoo, and then I just went through that line of feats, going up to things like Virtue Forged tattoos, ornate tattoos, to give him additional spells. And then I also pick up the Sorcerer bloodline and multi-class archetype for him to give him a little bit more. Since he's a time traveler, I thought it was only appropriate to make sure that he had a spell like Time Beacon. He's got Mage Hand, Message, Anticipate Peril, Daze, right? All of that kind of basic telepathy, telekinetic type stuff that you want in there to round things out. I also, of course, like, he's a Vanguard, and the Vanguard has some, you know, way specific feats that if you're not using them, you're really missing out on the best part of being a Vanguard, right? So I made sure that amongst all of these other feats that he's picking up, that he grabs Phalanx Breaker, where you get to roll up, knock people out of the way, blast your gun, and then become immobile, lock yourself in. There's actually an issue of New Mutants that crosses over with another comic of that era, New Warriors, where Cable literally like busts through a wall and is sitting there with a big gun, like holding the line while the New Mutants roll in behind him. And I was picturing all of these like comic panels as I was building the characters. So every time I grabbed a feat, I was like trying to make sure I knew which comic book panel it immediately made me think of. And then Blast Tackle, which is, you know, you run up, even if it's a two-handed weapon, you jam it into somebody, grab them, and then you just start unloading as long as you can hold on to them. You don't even need to have two hands on the gun because you're using your opponent to stabilize the gun as the second hand. I also, for his skills and skill feats, I really leaned into athletics, obviously, because he's a Vanguard. He wants to throw people around, and Cable is a huge dude to begin with. And then his other one that goes all the way up to legendary is crafting, because Cable is from the future. He's always got lots of cool weapons and items and things to play with. And then I riffed off of those with like the skill feats that I took with him, stuff like improvised tool, crafter's appraisal, rapid a fixture so he can swap out, you know, talismans. I was kind of thinking about it as like, you know, swapping out weapon attachments on the fly and thing, you know, futuristic stuff. So yeah, leaned into all of that stuff. For his general feats, quick repair, toughness, underground network, because he's a freedom fighter from the future, and a lot of the people who he works with are not people who get on well with the government. And then true perception, because, you know, he's got a cybernetic eye, he's got this telepathy and telepathic powers. He's pretty hard to fool, so that seemed like a good way to kind of round that out towards the top end there.
Nice. I love this, and I think it really drives home kind of the character concept that you're hitting all the main points of Cable. Something we did behind the scenes to everyone watching is we discussed if we could have a free archetype with all of these, some ideas that we might have. One that immediately jumped out to me was
Duelist.
Only really for one. I think it fits well probably with the other feats as well. But when you take
Duelist,
I believe you also get quick draw as a free as a free feat. And having the ability to quickly switch between guns, I'm sure would be useful. You mentioned that barricade buster earlier, and despite it having kind of a very limited range of maybe the situations that it works great for, being able to just quickly pull it out and blast it when you need, I think is something to have in your toolkit.
Well, and I was really wanting to play with some of the cool action economy hacks that the gunslinger gets. So, you know, a repeating weapon has a it takes 3 actions to swap the magazine out on this thing, and those are the same actions that you use to like reload, but you have to go through all 3 of them. So I gave him stuff like he's got the Vanguard reload, which allows him to shove and reload at the same time. He's got running reload, so he can reload on the move. And then as his 20th level feat, I took perfect readiness, which, you know, makes him permanently quickened. And one of the things he can do with that is take a reload action on the weapon there. So by the time he's topped out, even if he has to swap out the magazine on that thing because he's blasted through all of the rounds already, he can shove, move, reload, and then still have an action available to fire one more time that round. So you never have a round where you're shut down, even if you've gone through your entire magazine and have to do the big reload. And on the off chance that something happens to that big gun, always have a backup weapon, right? And now in Cable's case, you would think that would be a melee weapon, but like, nah. He has a a greater striking double-barreled pistol as his backup weapon.
Love it. So yeah, having that variety is really important. It's interesting when I see people talk about weapons in Pathfinder. Often, it's very white room. A lot of I've done the math, and this one is better than this one, or whatever. But as especially as you level up and you get access to runes, there's a wide gap between of levels where you're gonna have a +2 weapon with 2 potency runes on it. You can get a couple of those. The current character that I'm playing right now in Strength of Thousands, I always keep a returning Mambale with me so I can throw that and keep at distance, and a shield. So I've always got that when I need it. And then if things need to get close and personal, I keep a great axe on me also, so I can just drop that and switch at any time. And having those 2 different modes of melee fighting has actually been really entertaining for me as a player. It keeps me on my toes, it gives me more options, and it gives me 2 completely different ways to approach how I go into combat. And I feel like this build also would have a good variety just in the different kind of guns you could pick up and have with you at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to like what's the best weapon is whatever works best with your build,
Absolutely.
right? Like whatever your character can capitalize on, that's gonna be the best weapon for you. And it really, the way that you build your character to use the weapon will always be kind of the most important factor of the build, right? There's all kinds of different directions you can go, even just within firearms, right? If you want to use a fatal firearm, then you're going to lean more into feats and stuff that increase your accuracy, because the point of that is you're trying to get the crit. And in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you beat the target AC by 10 or more, that's a crit. And gunslingers already have legendary, the best attack proficiency you can get. So figuring out how you want to capitalize on that works really well. Cable, I actually leaned into keeping his dexterity maxed out all the way through across his build. I don't always do that with Vanguards, though. Cable, it worked out well because I was able to get his strength easily up to his 2nd highest stat without leaving him feeling shorthanded anywhere. But I've done, for certain ancestries and things, I'll do 16/16 strength dex on a Vanguard starting out because that athletics is so important. Having the strength to carry big guns and be ready when you want to put your large bore attachments on there to get the extra damage from kickback and stuff. All of that can matter more collectively than that 1 point of accuracy from really leaning into the deck. So always, optimization is good, but real optimization is finding all of the pieces that kind of fall together into something that plays in a way that you have fun with and that you enjoy, and
Yeah.
That's what optimization is for me. Optimization is never hitting that certain white room marker. It's having a character where every time I sit down and play, I have an amazing time and I feel like I was a strong contributor to the group and that everybody else felt good that I was there with them,
Yeah, I know. I definitely get that. I've developed a bit of a different mantra lately. I'm playing a barbarian, and something I found barbarians do really good is offering you just this giant swath of options in combat in terms of the actual actions you can take. So, I can do a charge attack, I can do a furious finish, I can do a swipe, and it's really interesting. Just having swipe alone has completely changed the way I approach battle because I'm constantly looking to run into situations where people are next to each other, so I can make 2 attacks at 0 map. Like, that's great. And I'm really leaning into that more and more as I play. And it's not always, if you build a person to do one thing. The first character I ever played was just a crazy DPS Eldritch Archer, and I had to get that out of my system, and so I could hit those big numbers, and I killed a Magma Dragon in 2 hits. That's my crowning achievement. But I got that out of my system, and now I'm finding that the more variety I have in my gameplay and the more options that are available to me, the more I'm enjoying every fight. And actually, the better I am in every fight because I can actually have a response to the wide varieties of situations that you can find yourself in Pathfinder 2e. Sometimes people build something and, I can crit fish, but I'm going to only be doing, piercing damage. And then you're fighting skeletons who are, taking off damage or immune to it or whatever. And then suddenly you're useless for a battle, or you build a ranged fighter and then you're in a close combat and now you can't do anything. So you mentioned earlier that 1 point difference between taking strength versus dex. If you're already a gunslinger, you're maxed out on your attack. So 1 more point, it's going to be useful for maybe crit fishing or landing that attack, but it might be better served in other areas when it comes to rounding out yourself as a character. And when we do that, we also round ourselves out as a team. And I've said this, time and time again, teamwork beats optimization every time in this game. The more your team is working together, the better they're going to do as a whole.
That +1 for me may give me that slightly better chance to crit. But if instead that +1 is over in my athletics and I can shove somebody off of my wizard and the wizard gets off a spell they wouldn't have gotten off otherwise without provoking an AOO, that's going to be worth way more than that 1 point, that slightly higher chance to crit I had, right? Because now we get an entire lightning bolt in the enemy's face, or now I've pushed them into position where the rogue and swashbuckler don't have to run around to flank. They just are right there and ready to go. And I think that's really like the coolest thing you can do with your third action in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, in my opinion, is usually whatever sets up the party member who comes after you to do something even better than what they could have done if you hadn't set them up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I find that the more we're doing that, the more we're just steamrolling and getting better at the game as a whole. It's easy to just go in there and throw out 3 attacks every time and be done. And yes, you can win fights doing that. But as soon as you start incorporating, aids and anything you can to boost your teammates and debuff the enemies, you'll find that, that +2 we were talking about earlier, +1 to hit, that might be nice from your stats, is never going to be as good as, tripping an enemy and flat-footing them -2 across the board to everyone on your team. Well, any other thoughts on the Cable build?
I think that like with the free archetype and just as the base build itself, as we keep mentioning the versatility, I just think also just the base action economy that comes with a gunslinger, especially as someone who's been playing one for a while now with the Sniper, not the Vanguard. Basic actions like aid is probably like the best thing for this build, especially if you do like a shove, aid, shot action or something in that like variety. Because I know Vanguards, when they have this very powerful opening, especially when you roll for initiative, like all gunslingers have, like snipers have 1 shot, 1 kill. The pistolero has 10 paces, so on and so forth. I could just keep rattling off names of class features if you really, really want. I think Cable's going to have this very powerful opening. And then the fact that you can still maintain it with this bunker buster, because like obviously I don't know anything besides like what's been said here already. But I think that continuing the fire on, I think the only question I would really have would be, would other archetypes such as like Chrono Skipper really work in this case? Because I know Cable from like the media that I've seen him portrayed in, which is the Deadpool video game Deadpool 2, where it's very much around the time travel aspect of it all. And I'm not going to say like precog from Starfinder, because like it's not officially in 2E.
Yeah, Chrono Skipper, I think, would definitely be a really viable one. For me, if I were going to go free archetype, the thing that I was thinking about leaning into was Sterling Dynamo, because a very big kind of key factor of, Cable is the fact that he has, a prosthetic arm. And then in addition to that, that kind of rounds out that little, I'm never unarmed. I've always got, a backup weapon in the form of that, Sterling Dynamo thing is there. But I also, I think at this point with the build, everything else is solid enough that I would have a hard time resisting that temptation of just trying to chase down every little piece of flavor that I could, get my hands on. And realistically, over the course of 20 levels, if you're using free archetype rules, you probably pick up Chrono Skimmer and Sterling Dynamo before all is said and done, right?
We were talking about the implications before the stream started of picking up the free archetype, and that is something to consider if you're going to play a 1 to 20 campaign or just any high level gameplay. Free archetype means probably 2, maybe 3 free archetypes as you're working your way through. That's something to consider. All right, well, I think with that I'll move on to my first build. I'm excited for this one. I've had this one in my pocket for a long time, and I built it just to see if it was possible or to see how far out I could take this concept. And actually, the more I put it together, the more everything actually worked together very well. So both my builds are a little conceptual just to kind of see if they can be done builds, but I think both could be useful within gameplay too, if you wanted to kind of take them and maybe just tweak them to your own liking. I'm just going to talk about, I think, the most important parts that really keep the build together, but there's a lot of wiggle room here as we're going through. So first off, I'm taking a Scoundrel Rogue. For a Scoundrel Rogue, when you successfully feint, the target is flat-footed against melee attacks. You attempt against it until the next turn. And on a crit, it's flat-footed to everyone on your party and not just you. So that's kind of going to be the base of the build. I'm going to choose human, versatile heritage. And as much as I hate taking human sometimes, it's hard to get away from that versatile heritage, which is so good, getting a free general feat on first level, and actually need to for this build. I'm going to pick up shield block, which will come into play later. I'm going to take cooperative nature as my ancestry feat. +4 to aid checks is fantastic. Really, in any situation, it's going to help you out. You can aid. Also, being a rogue, I'm going to have great skill training, so I can aid in a variety of situations. And then lastly, I'm going to pick up Twin Feint as my first level feat. That's going to give me the ability to automatically flat-foot an enemy, so I can always apply my sneak attack damage, which is huge for a rogue. It's 2 actions, that's the downside, but just automatic flat-foot, so I'm getting the +2 to hit and being able to add sneak attack if I hit. And then we're going to move on to level 2. This is where things start to get spicy. So the name of this build, which I don't know if I said at the beginning, is 4 Reaction Randy. So what we're going to build towards is the ability to have 4 reactions every turn that we can take. I'm going to start this off with a Bastion dedication. As soon as I pick that up, I get Reactive Shield for free, and that's going to let me use a reaction to gain +2 to my AC through raising a shield. So I can use a reaction to raise a shield instead of an action. There's some pros and cons to this. I've played with a Reactive Shield character. The downside is you can't shield block typically, because if you've used your reaction to raise the shield and get the +2 AC, that means you can't use a reaction to shield block and absorb the damage. But having it on is great. And also, let's say my AC is 20 and I have an attack coming at me that's 21 to hit. I can wait until I hear the attack roll before I choose to activate it, which is great, as opposed to, sadly, the rogue's nimble dodge. You have to declare before the roll is said. So we're going to have that on us. That's another reaction we'll have on deck. At level 3, I'm going to pick up Bon Mot, everyone's favorite. Bon Mot is great, and it's actually very useful for this build, because when you're successful, the enemy is going to have a -2 or a -3 if you crit on their perception checks, which is great for feinting, because I'm going to be doing a lot of feinting, and they're going to use their perception checks to guard against that. So a +2 or a -2 or -3 to the perception checks is going to go a long way for that. At 4, I'm going to pick up Disarming Block with my Bastion dedication. There aren't too many feats in Pathfinder 2e that give you a free action, and this is one of them. Disarming Blocks, if you've shield blocked an enemy's melee attack, you can use the free action to automatically go for a disarm on them, which is just great. And a lot of people I've heard a lot of critiques about the disarm action as a whole. It's hard because you got to get that crit in order to actually have it pull off. But being able to just have a free action where you can do it, and maybe even just get that normal success where they take the -1 to, or maybe -2 to future attempts. And then you could go for a disarm on your turn if you wanted. That can be great. I mean, knocking a weapon or a shield out of an enemy's hand is fantastic if you have the ability to do that. You can take away their runes they have on that weapon, take away the striking, and just leave them with, their fists. That can have big implications. At level 5, I'm going to take Natural Ambition, which is a staple for the human ancestry. I'm going to pick up, which gives me a free first level feat. I'm going to pick up Your Next, which is giving us another reaction that we can use. Your Next is great and so flavorful. I've taken it in my previous characters. After you down someone, you can use your reaction to point at another enemy and say, "You're next." And they take, you get a +2 and a free intimidation check for the reaction. So you get it to make an intimidation, tell someone that they're about to die next, which is great and has led to a lot of good role play moments in the game. All right, next, level 6, I'm going to take Shielded Stride. So Shielded Stride is awesome as long as you have your shield raised and you move half your speed, you don't trigger reactions, especially for a rogue where typically HP is going to be a concern. If you get ganged up on by 3 enemies and you need to, just in case, raise your shield and just back the heck out of there, it's always great to have in your pocket in case you need it. Again, as we're talking about these builds, options are your best friend, and this is going to provide us an exit option, which you should always have for your character. Especially, I'm looking at you casters out there who get surrounded by enemies and go, "Oh no, I'm dead." Have some options to get out of there. That's important. 7, I'm going to take Canny Acumen. I don't hear people taking this one a lot, but it's actually super useful and it scales. It gives us expertise on a save of our choice. I believe I took Fortitude for this, and it also scales at 17. So at level 17, you become master at that save. So boom, bump up those saves. That's always useful. At 7, I'm also going to take Godless Healing, so I can wombo combo with Battle Medicine and get a +5, and I can heal everyone in battle. That's always great. Which brings us to level 8. At level 8, I'm going to and this one is absolutely essential to build, Opportune Backstab, which is possibly my favorite reaction in the game. The way Opportune Backstab works is if one of your teammates has made a strike on an enemy, you can activate it and make a strike on the enemy as well. It has to be a melee strike. So it's kind of like, I'd say it's a better Attack of Opportunity. Attack of Opportunity activates when they move from your space, but as long as someone's getting hit here, you can take Opportune Backstab and make a strike on them. Now, for all of you people thinking about builds, imagine a team of 4 rogues who all had Opportune Backstab surrounding an enemy. One of them hits, boom, 4 reactions. You can make 4 attacks at 0 map, which is important because you never take map outside of your turn. All right, moving things along. Multi-talented, again, another staple for humans. Pick up a free archetype dedication. I'm going to take Swashbuckler, Fencer Style. So I gain Panache when I successfully feint an enemy. Panache is great for 2 reasons. It's going to give me a constant +1 to future feints if I keep Panache. And if I want to use Panache, I can also, on an attack, I can deal a little extra damage, which is great. And then level 10 is where the build starts to really come online. Level 10, I get quick shield block through the Bastion dedication, which gives me a free extra reaction every turn that I can use to shield block. This is great because that means every turn I don't need to worry about using my reaction to shield block. I have 2 options now. I can either spend an action on my turn to raise a shield and then use one of my reactions to shield block, or you can use your reaction with reactive shield to raise your shield and then use your this new free reaction we got to quick shield block if you need and if you don't want to spend an action on your turn. 11, I'm going to take Toughness because extra HP is always good. 12 is where I get to take Preparation, which is a rogue feat that is fantastic. Gives you a free reaction every turn that you have to use a rogue reaction, so a reaction with the rogue trait. So this can be used on Backstab. So now I want you to picture that same team we had before of 4 characters who all had Backstab. Let's say they had all used Preparation to get a second rogue reaction. They could use their first, as soon as an enemy gets hit, you can use your first reaction. Boom, everyone gets off an attack. And as long as one of those attacks lands, if everyone had used Preparation, you can do it again and hit them with 8 attacks in one turn, up to 8 attacks, 0 map on any of those, which is great. So now we are up to 3 reactions. We're going to keep it going. Here's the point where if you wanted to say, okay, 3 reactions is enough, I'm going to do my own thing, I wouldn't blame you. It would be totally reasonable to just go on from here. But I want that 4th reaction and we're going to get it. So level 13, I'm going to take Keep Up Appearances as an ancestry feat. Not going to be affected. If you're affected by a motion effect, you can roll a deception check versus the enemy's perception DC. We're going to have great deception because we're a feint build anyways with high charisma. So this just adds another option to defend against any emotional effects. If you're successful, this is fun. The enemy believes you weren't affected by the emotion effect, which can have a lot of other implications. I think this might be really interesting outside of battle if you get hit with an emotion effect. Keep Up Appearances, and they're just like, oh, shoot, it didn't work at all, and it might change their course of action. At level 14, I'm going to take Swashbuckler's Riposte. Swashbuckler's Riposte is the best riposte, I think. It gives you the Opportune Riposte, which is the best riposte because it doesn't have any prereqs. There's also Twin Riposte, but that requires we have 2 actions in our hand and we use, I believe, Twin Feint, which costs an action. And there's also Dueling Riposte, which is great, but it requires a hand free. They all do the exact same thing, which is on if an enemy critically fails their attack against you, you can make an attack against them as well. Now, this has heavy implications on combat as well, because if enemies know that making a 3rd map attack against you is likely to crit fail, they're a lot less likely to do that, and they might not engage you quite as much, which can be great for you because if you take away an enemy's options, that can be also awesome. And also, if they at any point critically fail an attack against you, boom, you can hit them with one of those ripostes. All right, 15, I'm going to take Incredible Initiative. This is great because it just gives you a +2 to your initiative, and it procs off of the rogue's surprise attack. So any creatures who haven't acted yet in a turn are flat-footed. So if you want to go as soon as humanly possible, so that you can flat-foot everyone on your attacks. 16, I'm going to take basic flair for unbalancing finisher, where you can make a strike, and if it lands, if enemy is flat-footed until end of your next turn, which is great as a rogue, because if you can keep an enemy flat-footed, you can always add that sneak attack. At 18, I'm going to take another really fun rogue feat here. It's called sidestep, and the way this works is if an enemy misses an attack against you and there's another enemy next to them, you can sidestep the attack and redirect the enemy's attack at another one of the enemies, which is great. And it doesn't require a crit fail, just any missed attack, this counts. This being a rogue feat also means you can use your preparation to have it ready on you. So giving yourself a lot of different options to attack enemies on their turn. And then at level 19, I'm going to take True Perception. I think, Michael, you had this in another build as well, which gives you constant true seeing, always useful. And at 20, finally, we got to that fourth reaction. I'm going to take Advanced Flair for Reflexive Riposte, which gives us an extra reaction every turn that we can use to riposte. So now, to quickly review all of the different things you can use your reaction for, you will now have the ability to attack an enemy if they critically miss you, if one of your teammates attacks the enemy, if they miss you and there's another enemy next to you, you can redirect their attack. And then all of the other little reactions we picked up through our human heritage, and any others that you might take as well. The whole point of this build is just set ourselves up for success outside of your turn, which I think is just a really interesting way to play the game. Well, also, if you use that preparation every turn, you're still going to have 2 actions. At higher levels, you'll be hasted, so you maybe use that 3rd action to attack. Really give yourself a plethora of different options and situations where you can react to your opponents and set them up in situations where they're going to get hit if they come after you. Yeah, that is the build. Very long-winded with that. Thank you for sticking with me, everyone. What are initial impressions?
Well, I thought it was funny. You know, I kind of skimmed because I was trying to just focus on kind of like the key parts of the build, but we did have like certain like key overlaps. Like multi-talented was what I used to grab that sorcerer dedication on the cable build that I was talking about. And then I also grabbed heroic presence because I think like the leader of any superhero team, if you don't, you know, if you're a human and you don't have something else specific that you're using that 17th level ancestry feat on, it almost always makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's such a, I mean, 17th level feat is going to be good no matter what. I'm going to pick that up.
So what would you do with if you had access to free archetype with this build?
I had a couple of thoughts listening to it.
Go ahead.
The first one is one that like thematically is a little out of left field, but mechanically is like kind of a really sexy thing to think about, which was Viking. Because Viking is a shield-oriented archetype, kind of like Bastion, but it's a more kind of offensive, burning through your shields kind of archetype. And it gets the really awesome second shield, where if you shield block and your shield breaks, you just whip out your next shield, right? Which would be really handy for this build. And you might even like lean even harder into that. Instead of getting, you know, shields that take a couple hits, you might buy some consumable shields, like exploding shields. So you're just like, kaboom! Hit me again, see what happens. I've already got another one loaded, right? The other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about all of this was either champion or maybe fighter, just to bring up the sturdiness of your shield. And now you wouldn't want to do that if you were going the Viking route, because in the Viking route, you want to blow up your shields. You don't want to lean into making it less likely to pop because you're actually trying to get a cycle and trying to use you know, a single action to have as many things happen at once as you can. You're like, okay, I want my AC to go up. I want the damage to be reduced. And I want the shield to blow up and deal damage to you. So that would kind of be a divergent route. If you weren't going to go Viking, maybe look at champion and lean into some of the champion sheets for upgrading your shield and shield capabilities.
Yeah, and the 2 ideas I had for if you are playing with free archetype that work really well with this is Dandy, fan of Dandy, everyone knows. But if you want to have kind of a social aspect to your character as well, this one is built very combat oriented, which can be fun. But I think it's also important as you're building the characters to think about what they look like outside of combat. So Dandy would be a great one, so that you've already got this really high charisma that you need for fainting. So being able to just walk in and to any party and be the face of the group is always going to be useful. The other one idea I had was a poisoner. And Poisoner has the ability, it works well with any rogue, but rogues are great because you can stack up a lot of damage, and being able to apply poison to your weapons on top of panache, on top of the sneak attack, is going to be able to let you hit these massive attacks on your turn if you kind of set yourself up right for them.
Yeah, and you're making so many attacks, you make sure you've got the stuff that makes sure the poison sticks until you actually like get it in somebody, and you're at a place like damage is not going to be a problem with the reaction Randy build, right? So looking at ways to add in those kind of secondary functions of debuffing and stuff like that, that's really smart.
I agree. That is really smart. I'm so smart. All right. Well, moving on, James, why don't you present us your first build?
Yeah, sure. Sorry for. Alright, so we'll cut this. Someone is street racing outside my window.
Oh,
so if you
nice.
guys hear, oh no, this is a problem because they do it until like 4 a.m. And then start up again at 7. So if you guys hear any loud motorcycles, let me know. I'll just repeat my sentences. But I promise this is why I haven't been like saying a lot. It's because I've gotten people who have blown out mufflers think it's funny to go 100 down to 20. So for my character, I decided to go with the Looney Tune, because after all, why should I do anything normal? Now, Pathfinder has a very good feat structure where you can reflavor a lot of abilities to literally become a cartoon. A lot of people like to go with the more Tolkien route. I like to prefer to go more the Animaniacs route. After all, Pathfinder's a game, and I do not care. So I went pretty simple with this. I have a genie-blessed goblin who has the unbreakable goblin heritage, which means I am not going to go down anytime soon. And if I do, I have Bouncy Goblin to make sure that if I fall down, like any good cartoon, I'm able to just bounce right back up. I decided to go Investigator with this because I knew that Investigator had some of the most prepared, but also the most improvisable class features possible. Being able to adapt anywhere on the fly, having a full martial set of abilities, and also giving me alchemy stuff instead of needing a multi-class. I have it built in as a subclass, so I decided to go with alchemical studies. I can now pull out tinctures when I need it, very much in the alchemist sense.
And all of your alchemical items have Acme printed on them,
all
right?
over them.
Right.
Yes, of course. This whole thing really comes to life at 3rd level, where I can start taking Precedent Planner. I know there's a 6th level feat. I took that one later because that one is going to give you extra bonuses on top of all this. But we're essentially going to be focusing this build on being able to pull giant anvils, mallets, hammers, rockets, whatever I need, just because I planned for it. You will need a lot of gold to really make sure this build goes well, but you really aren't going to spend a lot of money at the same time because you're more so saving your money for when you need to pull something out randomly. So this worked really well because I also took Sleeves of Holding because I think that's always the funniest thing. And so I like the idea of my character like taking off a glove, reaching in and pulling out, like a cat to throw at them, like throw Tasmanian Devil, as you will. And so a lot of this build has to do with performance. We took a lot of skill-based performance feats, getting people distracted, a lot of deception, a bit of intimidation because I know it's technically not a cartoon, but there's a scene in Beetlejuice where they stretch their faces and put in like the eyeballs and stuff like that. So I was just like, oh, okay, so if we're doing like a cartoony, but like I still need a demoralize foes, I threw legendary into intimidation. And so a lot of this build relies on the 6th level predictive purchase feat, which lets me as a 2 actions pull something out of my repertoire of endless possibilities, especially with something like Treasure Vault, which would immediately expand all of those stuff that I can immediately pull out just as 2 actions instead of 1 minute. So a lot of this Action Economy is going to rely on that because I also get Precedent Consumable, which is going to let me, and then not only pull out that, but like I can pull out talismans, I can pull out potions, I could basically I have access to any item in the game.
So for anyone here that might not be as familiar with the precedent feats, tell everyone what they do.
So basically, I can expend a number of gold equal to an item's cost. And narratively wise, it was, oh, the last town we were in, I totally bought this thing. Like I thought about this ahead of time, which is player talk for, please GM, let me do this. Oh wait, no, I have a feat that lets me do this. This is basically some of the best on the fly. Oh, I really, really need X item, but I don't have it, but I have the gold for it. So like, it's not making deal with the devils in a sense, like as in Blades of the Dark, but it's a little bit more of a little fun, clever workaround where, you know, in cartoons, you constantly have the item, you know, ready to go out. And, you know, if you do it right, as Roger Rabbit said, you can only do it when it's funny. And so a lot of this build does the crazy cartoon things. I got Quick Jump, I have Cling for Goblin, Unbreakable Buller. This thing's not going down. It is very much a loony bin of pure ADHD going nuts, and it's my one of my favorite builds. I think investigators just don't get enough love, and seeing this fully come to life it was so much fun getting to build it.
Prescient Planner and Prescient Consumable are some of my favorite kind of feats because they're the feats that acknowledge that your character might be smarter than you are, right? I remember in 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, there was one of the, like, whatever they called that top tier of your build when you were like levels 20 through 30. There was this illusionist, God, I can't remember what they called them, but there was this illusionist path, and like your capstone ability was when you die, you didn't actually die. That was an illusion you had set up, and you're actually alive and totally fine over there.
Yes.
And like, I love stuff like that so much.
Yeah, and actually, it was funny. I know this isn't Pathfinder at all or D&D related, but in Lancer, I had ally do the exact same thing where I was about to eat a ton of damage. They're like, no, that's a projection. You're actually over there. Like, choose another spot. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is my jam. Like, I need as someone who does not often think that far into the future when coming into TTRPGs, ask any of the GMs I've played with how many times as a wizard I will run fully into melee combat, not thinking about the implications going on there. I'm on character number 8 now. If that explains what's gone wrong with my builds.
You remember earlier when I said you should always have an exit plan? This sounds like you might learn a lesson from that, James.
Never. No, there's a reason why I go champions with 90% of my builds. They're perfect. They got everything I need in one little contained class of a package. But yeah, this is very much an insane Looney Tune. Like, I literally watched like Looney Tunes back in action. I was just like, this is what I want. This is what I need. And yeah, it's definitely out of the box. It's not. I don't think most people are going to be like, I want to play Roger Rabbit, you know, and I'm going to have Roger Rabbit take the ring all the way to Mordor. And
I don't know if either of you guys are who would win nerds. There's a subreddit called Who Would Win where people just face off different characters to see, you know, who's stronger, and you have to be able to point to specific moments in, you know, the comics or whatever to prove that your character could win or could do certain things. But thinking about the concept of Toon Force as it's explained just is infinitely engaging to me, because it's this idea, it's hard to discuss, because how do you beat a character with Toon Force, you know? And like, as long as, James, like you said, as long as it's funny, they can have a way to deal with any situation. They can always pull that mallet out. They can take any amount of damage. But how you beat them is you have to make the situation like not funny, where they won't have a reaction to the situation. I always find that really interesting. And it sounds like
you Marvin the Martian them and figure out a way to leave them on the moon with no way back.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I had banishment, this would go so much well.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And something cool about it we talked about earlier is that the prescient planner are just general feats, right, James? Like anyone can take them.
Oh yeah, no, I went investigator only because they have devise a stratagem,
Mhm.
which allowed a lot of the more, if I know it's not going to be funny, I'm not going to do it. This was my little workaround of, because devise a stratagem lets you use your intelligence modifier. Like most tunes are smart. They have a low wisdom score for a reason, but they're smart. And so it was a lot of narratively reflavoring a lot of stuff to be like, well, if the moment's not funny, like clearly I can't go strike them. I'm gonna like precedent planner, like throw out, I don't know, whatever item I think was needed the moment. But I also give this thing a rod of wonder. So you know what, like extra crazy if possible. I would have put the Ganzi heritage if I had an extra heritage slot or two to throw them in.
I do. I don't really play with any homebrew except one thing is whenever you use a Rod of Wonder in any of my games, I use the D10,000 table that you can find online. I love it. It's a table of 10,000 different effects that can happen. Sorry, Michael interrupted you.
No. I was just gonna say I love that like this character's most important power is comedic timing as represented by yeah.
Having a
That's
way to
just-
mechanically express that is just so cool, I think. Yeah. How
Yes.
else? Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes our first round of characters. Any last thoughts?
So I was thinking like free archetype stuff, the low-hanging fruit there is weapon improviser, right? Just so you're always good with the mallets and the anvils and whatever else, you know, you pull out of your cartoon bag. But I was thinking about it and I was like just spinning through my head. I was like, okay, it's about whipping up stuff on the fly. It's kind of cartoony. And then that led me to the I'll hug him and squeeze him and call him George option, which is you pick up Pact Bound Initiate, which turns you into the Salmon Car, which is like, you know, a like an Uber Yeti, basically. Because then you get like ice crafting, so you have the ability to whip even more stuff up as you need it and like put things in there. You get to be really big, which can be kind of hilarious and stuff. Just kind of a like out of left field thought suggestion, which I thought was really appropriate for this build.
I was debating if it was worth going, if changing enough of the build, because in the end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is a film I definitely watched for research purposes. Oh, spoilers for a movie from the 70s or 80s. Yeah. There's a cartoon gun that can fire like cartoon animated bullets. Now, I wrote a supplement that was inspired by this, but essentially, if you instead replaced pulling out anything with occasionally pulling out a full like cartoon firearm, like a 6-shooter or something like that, you could go unexpected sharpshooter archetype, and that really ramps up the craziness because that capstone feat of just random things happening in succession is just, it's so perfect Looney Tunes. Like I point to that archetype when I go, oh, this is a cartoon. This is no longer a game. This is just cartoon power in action.
Well, and if you're going to go unexpected sharpshooter and bust out a gun anyways, why not trade your Rod of Wonder for a Pistol of Wonder?
Yeah, Pistol
right?
of Wonder. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
The chart even has the little cartoon flag pop out depending on what you roll.
Oh, this is why I keep telling people Pathfinder can be that serious high fantasy, but you don't need it to be. Make it cartoon. It's okay to just Looney Tunes it.